Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled Ted Kaczynski, CIA Unabomber, because regardless of how you've been conditioned to believe in what is true about the Ted Kaczynski domestic terrorist is a lie, okay? And whatever it is was CIA sponsored and programmed. Let's look at Ted Kaczynski's Wikipedia page, shall we? Theodore John Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber, is an American domestic terrorist and former mathematics professor. He was a mathematics prodigy, but he abandoned his academic career in 1969 to pursue a more primitive life. All right? And I will go on. So it reads a lot like Charles Miles Maddox, renamed as Charlie Manson. Anyway, in other words, what you've been told about Ted Kaczynski is mostly out of context and false. A mendacity. All right. So between 1978 and 1995, allegedly, Ted Kaczynski killed 3 people and injured 23 others in a nationwide mail bombing campaign against people that he believed were advancing modern technology and the destruction of our environment. He authored The Industrial Society and Its Future, which is a 35,000-word manifesto which the media has renamed the Unabomber Manifesto. It's also a social critique which opposes industrialization and leftism and advocates for a nature-centered form of anarchism. In other words, it goes against the bank-funded anthropology establishment. In 1971, allegedly, Ted Kaczynski moved into a remote cabin without electricity or running water near Lincoln, Montana, where he lived as a recluse, whilst learning survival skills to become self-sufficient. After witnessing the destruction of the wilderness surrounding his cabin, he concluded that living in nature was becoming impossible, and he resolved to fight industrialization and the destruction of nature through terrorism. In 1979, Kaczynski became the subject of what, by the time of his arrest, the longest, most expensive investigation in the history of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI used the case identifier Unabomb. That's an acronym, UNABOM. University and Airline Bomber. That's what they and it used the acronym to mean, University and Airline Bomber, before his identity was known, resulting in the media naming him the Unabomber. This is very comical to me, people, because you do know that Ted Kaczynski was recruited by the CIA in high school, okay? So the idea that he could go missing like Patty Hearst, like Patricia Hearst went missing for a year and a half, while she's living near Paul Pelosi and Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein and the University of San Francisco Jesuit, and she's living walking distance from Jerry Garcia's house and where Janis Joplin lived on Masonic Avenue, for crying out loud. You telling me that Patty Hearst is living a couple of houses away from Paul Stein, the yellow cab driver, the last Zodiac murderer, and the FBI can't find her? Poppycock! They know where this guy is 24/7. He was selected at age 15 when he was a mathematical prodigy. Okay, so what's missing from this story, right? Well, you do know that he was born in Chicago, all right? He was born May 22nd, 1942, which makes him about a year older than Abigail Folger and Sharon Tate, okay? So he's a little older than Sharon Tate. He's a little older in terms of, he's 8 months older than Sharon Tate, and he's about a year and 3 months older than Abigail Folger. And that's important because Ted Kaczynski is part of their family, whether you knew it or not. He's part of that generation of CIA operatives. Because Ted Kaczynski, Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger were all CIA agents. Theodore John Kaczynski, born in Chicago on May 22nd, 1942, to working class parents Wanda Teresa and Theodore Richard Kaczynski, who was a sausage maker. The two were Polish Americans. They were raised as Catholics, but they later became atheists, and they were married in April 11th, 1939. From 1st to 4th grade, ages 6 through 9, Ted Kaczynski attended Sherman Elementary School in Chicago, where administrators described him as healthy and well-adjusted. In 1952, the family, which is 3 years after his younger brother was born, he had a younger brother named David, the family moved to suburban Evergreen Park, Illinois. Ted transferred to Evergreen Park Central Junior High School after his testing score, IQ, was measured at 167. I think that put him on the radar of the CIA in junior high school. He skipped 6th grade. Ted Kaczynski later described this was a pivotal event. Previously, he had socialized with his peers and was even a leader, but after skipping ahead of 6th grade, he did not feel that he felt in with the older children who bullied him. In high school, Ted Kaczynski attended Evergreen Park Community High School, where he excelled academically. He played the trombone, and he marched in the marching band. He was a member of the mathematics, biology, coin, and German clubs. That's math, biology, coin, German. So 4 different clubs in high school. 1996, a former classmate of Ted Kaczynski was quoted as saying, he was never really seen as a person, as an individual personality. He was always regarded as a walking brain, so to speak. Anyway, during this period, Ted Kaczynski became intensely interested in mathematics, spending hours studying and solving advanced mathematical problems. He became associated with a group of like-minded boys who were interested in science and mathematics. They were referred to as briefcase boys for their habit of always carrying briefcases. Throughout high school, Ted Kaczynski was always ahead of his classmates academically. He was placed in a more advanced mathematics class. He soon mastered that material. He skipped the 11th grade, so that's 2 grades he skipped. He attended summer school. He graduated high school at age 15. Ted Kaczynski was one of the school's 5 national merit finalists. That's a heck of a school to have 5 merit finalists, national merit finalists. He was encouraged to apply to Harvard University, which is a CIA university, right? While still age 15, he was accepted into Harvard University. What a shock. What a surprise. And he entered that university in 1958 at age 16 on a full academic scholarship. However, there were strings attached to that scholarship which are not included in his Wikipedia page. That's why you come to my channel, right? Because you want additional research not available by the clandestine services. Anyway, they packed him off and sent him to Cambridge, Massachusetts before he really was ready. He didn't even have a driver's license. Harvard University, his first year at Harvard, Ted Kaczynski lived at 8 Prescott Street, which was designed to accommodate the youngest, most precocious incoming students in a small, intimate living space. For the following 3 years, he lived at the Elliott House. Housemates and other students at Harvard described Ted Kaczynski as very intelligent but socially reserved person. Ted Kaczynski earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in mathematics from Harvard University in 1962 with a GPA of 3.12. It's pretty impressive for a teenager who would be approximately, 19 years old. Maybe he's 20. All right, so I think he was 19 years old when he graduated from Harvard. You should know, people, that when Ted Kaczynski was receiving his diploma from Harvard, That was the first year that Abigail Folger appeared as a freshman, and she was 18 years old. So Abigail Folger is at Harvard, at Radcliffe Harvard University, which is across the street from Harvard. However, there are shared classes between Harvard and Radcliffe. And you should know that Ted Kaczynski, age 19, is a senior. I think he's age 18 at the fall of 1961, his senior year. Ted Kaczynski is 18 years old. Scratch that. Ted Kaczynski is 19 years old. Abigail Folger is 18 years old. Abigail Folger is a freshman at Radcliffe. Ted Kaczynski is a senior at Harvard. They're living in close proximity to each other at Harvard. And essentially, Ted Kaczynski's senior year and Abigail Folger's freshman year coincide. And you know who else is there, people, that's not mentioned in this Wikipedia? Timothy Leary is there the whole time, as is Richard Albert, who has a PhD from Stanford University. Timothy Leary has a PhD from University of California, Berkeley. Timothy Leary's PhD is in psychology. Richard Albert's PhD is in psychology. And they are going to restructure the mind of young Ted Kaczynski, Theodore John Kaczynski. And the deal to get this academic scholarship required Ted Kaczynski to commit 3 years of his 4 at Harvard to the supervision and mentoring of Timothy Leary and Richard Albert, who restructured his brain using psilocybin, LSD, and electroshock treatments off campus in a Victorian home which backed up to a botanical garden. I believe that home's been torn down. The botanical garden is still there, however. Timothy Leary was a much older man. He was in his late 30s at that time. Timothy Leary, the LSD maven, tune in, turn on, drop out. Timothy Leary, he hadn't uttered those words just yet. Career CIA operative, born October 22nd, 1920. Timothy Leary went to Holy Cross College. That's where Anthony Fauci went to school. Timothy Leary went to University of California, Berkeley for his PhD. Richard Albert, what a piece of work he is, right? So let's look at Richard Albert briefly. You do know that he's concealed his real name, Richard Albert. He wants you to think his name is Baba Ram Das. Baba Ram Das, who's the cohort of Timothy Leary, also a career CIA agent from Stanford University. And he's an expert on therapeutic effects of psychedelic drugs. He conducted research with Timothy Leary using Theodore John Kaczynski as a guinea pig. Richard Albert assisted Harvard Divinity School and graduate student Walter Panicki in 1962. It was called the Good Friday Experiment for theology students. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that too much. It's also attributed that Baba Ram Das, aka Richard Albert, is a guru of modern yoga. I'm not sure what the distinction is between ancient yoga and modern yoga, or if Noam Chomsky is the father of modern linguistics, or that's just a made-up oxymoron term. But what you should know is that Richard Albert, his real name, was born April 6, 1931. So he's 10 and a half years younger than Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary, who is approximately 40 years old when young Ted Kaczynski is under his control, and Richard Albert would be 28, 29 years old when working with Ted Kaczynski, the future Unabomber. You should know that Richard Albert is Jewish, of course, right? His parents are Gertrude Levin and George Albert, who was a lawyer in Boston. He considered himself an atheist. He had a Jewish adventure, which he called his Jewish trip. He said he was never bar mitzvahed, and he became atheist when he rejected Judaism by not getting bar mitzvahed, I guess. Richard Albert attended the Woolston Northampton School, graduating cum laude in 1948. Graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Tufts University. He wanted to go to medical school, but instead he decided to study psychology. And he got a master's degree in psychology from Wesleyan University in 1954. And he continued on to Stanford University, where he wrote his doctoral thesis entitled Achievement, Anxiety, received a PhD in psychology from Stanford in 1957, and he then quickly moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts to join Timothy Leary in their psilocybin experiments, which was known as a new department for Harvard University, different from classical psychology. Psilocybin, mind restructuring, using mushrooms, and whatever. It's like all CIA projects. I see nothing, I hear nothing, I know nothing. That's Harvard's policy to get out of lawsuits. And you do know that there was a lawsuit, or a threatened lawsuit, because in 1963, both Richard Albert, who you know as Baba Ram Das, guru, who was sent to India to study Eastern spirituality, be just like the Maharishi, Transcendental Meditation. Well, that's Richard Albert, aka Baba Ram Das. Anyway, he joins with Timothy Leary. They screw up some student's brain. His parents are plugged in. They threaten Harvard with a lawsuit. Harvard sacks Richard Albert and Timothy Leary in April 1963, before Jack Kennedy had his head blown off. Whilst Abigail Folger is still plugging away at Harvard University, she's there, and they fire Timothy Leary and Richard Albert, bang, bang, quick like a bunny rabbit. But no harm, no foul, because Yale University and Stanford University provide grant funding for them to go to the Millbrook Institute on the Hudson River in the Hudson Valley at the Hitchcock Estate, where they continue the exact experiments of psilocybin that they conducted in Cambridge, Massachusetts at Harvard University. They proceeded to do in New York State, in the Hudson Valley, on Union Carbide property, known as the Hitchcock Estate. It has other names too. I'll tell you, both Richard Albert and Timothy Leary, of course, transferred over to Haight-Ashbury Project, CIA, San Francisco, where they work with Abigail Folger's mother, Ines Mejia. They work with Bill Graham, whose name is Wolf Grajanka, promoting free concerts. They worked with Sharon Tate's father. Don't you think it's ironic that Timothy Leary and Richard Albert, a.k.a. the yoga guru, worked with Abigail Folger's mother and Sharon Tate's father in Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco, where Dianne Feinstein is living at the time. Paul Pelosi hadn't rolled into town yet. Paul Pelosi and Nancy Pelosi, they don't show up till 1969, just before Abigail Folger and Sharon Tate are murdered. Paul Pelosi and Nancy are in San Francisco, ensconced in Presidio Heights, before that murder happened. Those murders happened. Anyway, I'm getting off the track a little bit here. I'm going to have to come back and do more videos on Ted Kaczynski. But what you need to know is he went 4 years to Harvard University. Okay? And what you also need to know is that he left Harvard and proceeded to University of Michigan, where he earned a master's degree in mathematics. He left after graduating a master's degree at Michigan. He went to University of California, Berkeley, okay, where he both, they accepted him and they gave him financial aid, which is code for CIA sponsorship. And I believe he was teaching at Cal Berkeley, at least as a lecturer. He did have this master's degree. Berkeley, by September 1968, Ted Kaczynski was appointed by UC Berkeley as an assistant professor status, and he signed on for the track for tenure, thus creating this narrative that his career was going to be academics because he signed up for tenured status at University of California Systems. His teaching evaluations suggested that he was not well liked by his students. He seemed uncomfortable as a teacher. He taught straight from the textbook, and he refused to answer questions. Without explanation, Ted Kaczynski resigned on his own on June 30th, 1969. Now, when you hear things like that in applied linguistics, let me tell you what that is. That's code for the CIA had other plans for Ted Kaczynski. Instead of being a college professor like Noam Chomsky was, they decided that Ted Kaczynski would be more valuable in the field. Right? Right. All right. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of other poppycock in his biography, so there's no reason. You can read it for yourself. I will post links below. I just want you to know that Timothy Leary, Richard Albert from Stanford, Timothy Leary from Berkeley, Richard Albert from Stanford, Abigail Folger from the Santa Catalina Dominican School, Radcliffe, and Ted Kaczynski are all in Harvard University, Cambridge, Massachusetts. All four of these knuckleheads, well, except for Abigail Folger, she's not a knucklehead. She's a classy woman, speaks fluent French, plays classical piano, and has more class in her pinky finger than Noam Chomsky's entire Yiddish family. Okay? Anyway, those four operatives, Abigail Folger, Ted Kaczynski, Timothy Leary, tune in, turn on, drop out, LSD Maven, Richard Albert, a.k.a. modern guru for yoga. Those four CIA operatives are in Cambridge, Massachusetts, working out of Harvard University in 1962. Got it? 1962, 1963. There they are. Before Ted Kaczynski goes over to Michigan to get his master's degree in mathematics. I find that very disturbing. I also find it disturbing that Richard Albert becomes like a guru of yoga and changes his name to Baba Ram Dass. I find it quadruply disturbing that Oliver Silverstein Stone visits Timothy Leary on St. Patty's Day, St. Patrick's Day, 1996. That's a Sunday afternoon, March 17th, 1996, to pay tribute to Timothy Leary at the Sharon Tate Abigail Folger murder scene on Sunbrook Drive. 10106 Sunbrook Drive, which was a home that I'm sure the NATO soldiers used to sharpen their bayonets and take showers to get all the blood off of them and relax before they were shuttled back to the Hollywood Burbank Airport and flown back to a NATO airbase, probably in Belgium, West Europe. All right, so I think that that's enough for today. There's a treasure trove here. But don't believe everything you read in the papers. That's a quote that Sonny Barger told me when I asked him if he and his fellow Hells Angels members worked for free beer at the Altamont free concert organized by Bill Graham, who didn't attend the concert, where Meredith Hunter was bayoneted while Mick Jagger sang Sympathy for the Devil, which I believe was their third song of a long set. That this kid, this 18-year-old boy, was murdered early in the Rolling Stones, the final act. Not at the end of the set, the beginning of the set. Third song. All right, so what I wanted to tell you is that Sonny Barger, when I asked him that stupid question, did you work for free beer? 40 Hells Angels working from noon until, midnight in a winter night in a windy place called Altamont Speedway, which is on Midway Road, in case you didn't know. It's not on Altamont Pass. It's on Midway Road. It's next door to Altamont Pass, which is about a mile away. Anyway, what I wanted to tell you is that he looked at me with a straight face and said, don't ever believe what you read in the newspapers. So I'm going to pass that quote along to you. He told me that, I believe that was early 1978. And I have found that what Sonny Barger told me was 100% accurate. Don't ever believe anything you read in the newspapers. Thanks for listening. Please hit the like and subscribe. I am Shadow Band.